Hello, my name is Philippe Girard, a professor in the history department at McNeese State University.
And I'm Amber Hale. I'm from the biology department at McNeese. Welcome to Your Grandma Rocks, where we explore the lives of famous women in history.
Welcome and bienvenue à nos amis francophones. Vous écoutez la radio de l'Université McNeese.
On the program today, music and history as we retrace the life of a remarkable woman. She was a British chemist who made key discoveries in the study of coal, X-ray diffraction, viruses, and most importantly, DNA, the building block of life.
And she got plenty of official recognition for it.
Well, not quite.
Her name was Rosalind Franklin.
Along the way, we'll sample some songs by and about British women.
We'll start with Amy Winehouse.
Wait, I didn't know Amy Winehouse was interested in chemistry too.
Not really, unless you count heroin and alcohol. But Amy Winehouse and Rosalind Franklin were both talented British women of Jewish descent who died much too soon. Plus, I love her songs. We'll start with Rehab.
They tried to make me go to rehab. I said no, no, no. Yes, I've been black, but when I come back, no, no, no. I ain't got the time, and if my daddy thinks I'm fine, they try to make me go to rehab. I won't go, go, go. I'd rather be at home with Ray. I ain't got 70 days. 'Cause there's nothing you can teach me that I can't learn from Mr. Hathaway. Didn't get a lot in class, but I know it don't come in a shot glass. They try to make me go to rehab. I said no, no, no. Yes, I've been black, but when I come back, no, no, no. I ain't got the time, and if my daddy thinks I'm fine, just try to make me go to rehab. I won't go, go, go. The man said, why do you think you hit? I said, I got no idea. I'm gonna lose my baby. So I always keep a bottle near. Said I just think you're depressed. Dish me, yeah, baby, and go ahead. They try to make me go to rehab. I said no, no, no. Yes, I've been black, but when I come back, oh no, no, no. I don't ever wanna drink again. I just need a friend. I'm not gonna spend 10 weeks. Have everyone think I'm on the man. And it's not just my pride. It's just till these tears had dried. They try to make me go to rehab. I say no, no, no. Yes, I've been black, but when I come back, you no, no, no. I ain't got the time, and if my daddy thinks I'm fine, he's trying to make me go to rehab. I won't go, go, go.
Bonjour and welcome back to Your Grandma Rocks. We just listened to Rehab by Amy Winehouse. Je m'appelle Philippe Girard.
And I'm Amber Hale. Today we're exploring the life of the British chemist Rosalind Franklin, co-discoverer of the structure of DNA.
She was born in England in 1920.
Her family was Jewish, but Franklin was not religious. In fact, from a very young age, she developed some serious doubts about God's existence.
Doubt is good. Keeping a critical mind is key to being a good scientist.
Science is actually what made her question religion. Believing in God just because was not good enough for her. She wanted some actual evidence. To her mother, she said, "Well, anyhow, how do you know that he isn't a she?"
A scientist and a feminist. I like that. How old was she by that point?
Oh, just a little girl. But she remained an agnostic throughout her life because that's the way she functioned as a scientist. Before she would accept anything, it had to be backed by evidence.
Her family was rather wealthy and prominent. One of her relatives was Herbert Samuel, who was the first practicing Jew to serve in the British cabinet during World War I.
As a rich girl, she could simply have attended a finishing school where she would have learned needlework, piano, and French until she found a rich husband. But that was not the future she wanted for herself.
No, she was an extremely bright child and she wanted to learn. Her aunt was just amazed. Quote, "Rosalind is alarmingly clever. She spends all her time doing arithmetic for pleasure and invariably gets her sums right. And she was just 6 at the time."
As a girl, serious educational options were limited, so she attended St. Paul's in London, one of the few girls' schools that taught physics and chemistry.
She excelled in so many fields that in 1938, at age 18, she received a generous scholarship to attend university.
But since her family was wealthy, she had plenty of money to pay for her studies. So her dad told her to give the scholarship to a deserving refugee.
That was generous of them. 1938 was a time when Hitler ramped up his campaign of discrimination against Jews in Germany, so many Jewish refugees flocked to Britain in search of a better life.
The Franklin family was Jewish and wanted to help out, so they took on 2 Jewish children in their own home.
Rosalind Franklin then attended Cambridge University, where she did very well but did not get an official degree.
What was the matter? She skipped a few classes?
No, that was not her style. Cambridge simply did not award degrees to women back then.
Wow. In the meantime, World War II had begun, so she served as a volunteer warden during air raids.
She also began her first research project about coal. By classifying various kinds of coal based on their porosity, she helped decide which kind would be best suited for military purposes.
That research was the basis for her PhD dissertation, which she defended in 1945.
Let's take a second musical break, shall we?
Sure. I'd really love to hear a song by Vera Lynn. She was a major star in World War II Britain and was particularly popular with the troops.
Oh, I know just the one. Let's listen to "We'll Meet Again." That song was featured in the closing scene of the Stanley Kubrick comedy Dr. Strangelove, so it always makes me smile.
We'll meet again. Don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do, till the blue skies drive the dark clouds far away. So will you please say hello to the folks that I know? Tell them I won't be long. They'll be happy to know that as you saw me go, I was singing this song. We'll meet again. Don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day.
Welcome back. I'm Amber Hale, co-host of Your Grandma Rocks, your favorite women's history show on KBYS.
Favorite and only one, I'm afraid. We just listened to the World War II ballad We'll Meet Again by Vera Lynn. Vous écoutez la radio de l'Université McNeese.
Today we're covering the life of British chemist Rosalind Franklin. How many scientists have we covered on the show, Philippe?
Well, we had a show about the discoverer of radium, Marie Curie, and then another about Lisa Meitner, who studied nuclear fission in Germany, and one about the gorilla expert Diane Fossey. So that would make her number 4.
Fantastic. The shows about the scientists are my favorite. It's always good to have role models for young women who want to go into science.
Rosalind Franklin actually had a personal connection to Marie Curie. As a student at Cambridge, she had befriended Adrienne Weil, who had originally been a student of Marie Curie back in France.
Rosalind Franklin was a huge Francophile. As a young woman, she and her family often spent vacations in France, and she developed a deep love for that country.
Who wouldn't? She once said that, quote, the French lifestyle is vastly superior to that of the English. And here's another quote, I am quite sure I could wander happily in France forever. I love the people, the country, and the food.
Are you making those quotes up, Philippe?
I swear, these are her words, not mine.
After World War II ended, she actually got a job in France.
Yes, she joined a research lab headed by Jacques Mering, who was an expert on X-ray diffraction. You're the scientist, Amber, so I need you to explain what the heck that is.
X-ray diffraction itself is pretty simple. You aim a beam at a material you want to study, like a crystal, for example. And by observing the way that the X-rays scatter, you get an image that gives you information on the internal structure of the material.
A bit like getting an X-ray for your body?
Quite a bit, except the hardest part about X-ray diffraction is actually getting the things to crystallize.
Thank you for that information. I feel smarter already. Well, that scientist, Mering, had a huge influence on Rosalind Franklin because she later employed that technique of X-ray diffraction that she had learned from him to make her own signature discoveries on the structure of DNA. She also found that scientist handsome and charming, like all Frenchmen, I assume, and she became infatuated with him.
Wait, are you telling me she fell in love with a Frenchman?
Frenchmen are very hard to resist, but the true nature of their relationship remains a mystery to us. Mering later destroyed all the letters he had received from Rosalind Franklin, and she herself was very private about her sentimental life. So as far as we know, she never had a sustained relationship in her life and was just married to her own research.
Well, in any case, it's probably best that she did not pursue a relationship with Mering. After all, he was married and already had a mistress. So that would have been a complicated relationship, to say the least.
Yes, more than a love triangle or love quadrangle in that case. Anyway, that's a perfect segue for our next song, which is also about forbidden love with a married man. That song is Someone Like You by the British singer Adele. Bonjour à tous and welcome back to Your Grandma Rocks on KBYS. Je suis Philippe Girard.
And I'm Amber Hale. We just listened to Someone Like You by Adele.
Today we're covering the life of another English woman, Rosalind Franklin, one of the leading chemists of the 20th century. So far we followed her as she went to Cambridge to study and then to France for her first research job.
In 1950, she returned to England when she received a 3-year fellowship to work at King's College in London.
Her boss was John Randall, who encouraged her to shift her focus to DNA. You're a biologist yourself, Amber, so can you tell us what DNA is for?
Sure. DNA is the instruction book of life. So it's instructions on how to make all the things that make organisms run, and it's the part that's heritable, meaning it is passed from one generation to the next.
It wasn't clear at the time how DNA was structured and how it worked, so a lot of chemists in Europe and the US were in the race to figure out that mystery.
Franklin made some important contributions to that research. For one thing, she discovered that there were 2 forms of DNA. When DNA was wet, the fiber was long and thin, but when DNA was dry, it turned short and fat.
Franklin and a PhD student of hers named Raymond Gosling also used her expertise in X-ray diffraction to study the structure of DNA. They came up with a picture known as Photo 51, which gave key information on how DNA might be structured.
But Franklin and her PhD student were not the only ones working on that topic. At Cambridge, 2 scientists, Francis Crick and James Watson, were also making great strides. So was Linus Pauling, a talented American chemist working in the U.S.
And then there was Maurice Wilkins, who worked at King's College alongside Rosalind Franklin.
The 2 of them didn't get along well at all.
Well, of course, they were competing to be the first to crack the secret of DNA.
Also, they had major character differences. Franklin was direct, outspoken, and stern, in a way that could unnerve people who didn't know her well. Wilkins was so shy that he wouldn't even make eye contact with Franklin. Anyway, by early 1953, the research findings were coming together and various articles were on the verge of publication. It was a matter of weeks before someone became the official discoverer of the structure of DNA, a very exciting time in biology.
So who is going to win the race? Pauling in the US, Watson and Crick at Cambridge, our very own Rosalind Franklin, or her rival at King's College, Maurice Wilkins?
Stay tuned for the big reveal. And our next musical break.
We'll go with a song entitled The Scientist by the British rock band Coldplay.
Come up to meet you, tell you I'm sorry. You don't know how lovely you are. I had to find you, tell you I need you, tell you I set you apart. Tell me your secrets and ask me your questions. Now let's go back to the start. Running in circles, coming in tails, heads on the sides apart. Nobody said it was easy. It's such a shame for us to part. Nobody said it was easy. No one ever said it would be this hard. Oh, take me back to the start. I was just guessing at numbers and figures, pulling the puzzles apart. Questions of science, science and progress did not speak as loud as my heart. Tell me you love me, come back and haunt me. Oh, when I rush to the start, running in circles, chasing tails, coming back as we are. Nobody said it was easy. Oh, it's such a shame for us to part. Nobody said it was easy. No one ever said it would be so hard. I'm going back to the start.
We just listened to The Scientist by Coldplay. You're listening to Your Grandma Rocks on KBYS. I'm Amber Hale.
Et je suis Philippe Girard. Today we are retracing the life of the British chemist Rosalind Franklin.
Before our break, we had reached the point in 1953 when various scientists in the United Kingdom and the U.S. were on the verge of discovering the structure of DNA, the building block of life.
That competition was fierce, and that's where things got messy.
Yes, Pauling in the U.S. was the first out of the block with an article that came close to the truth, but contained a few but significant errors. Wilkins had obtained a pre-publication copy of the article, which gave him a chance to figure out how far his colleague had gone and what he had gotten wrong.
Wait, is that ethical? I often read pre-publication articles because I'm a reviewer for various historical journals, but then I'm not supposed to use what I read in their articles in my own research because they need to get published first. Otherwise, I would be stealing their work.
That pretty much describes the story in science as well. This was highly unethical of Wilkins to do. But wait, there's even more.
Wow.
Remember photo 51? That X-ray diffraction photo taken by Franklin and her PhD student that provided key information on the structure of DNA? Wilkins also managed to take a sneak peek at that photo without Franklin's authorization.
That's unethical too, right?
You bet. You don't get to look at someone else's data until they have had a chance to publish it or are trusting you with it.
Also, an internal report on research conducted by Franklin and others at King's College was shown to Watson and Crick, the other two scientists working on the same topic at Cambridge.
Again, this is not normal procedure.
So with that information and their own research, on April 25th of 1953, Watson and Crick went ahead and published a groundbreaking theoretical article on the structure of DNA in the prestigious scientific journal Nature. That same issue featured 2 other articles by Wilkins and Franklin where they presented some of their own data.
But those 2 articles came after the theoretical article by Watson and Crick, which gave the impression that they were just providing supporting evidence to the main article on the topic.
Watson and Crick also failed to indicate in their footnotes that they had access to the research findings of Franklin without her knowledge.
Not very ethical either. You want to give everyone credit, especially when you kind of stole their research in the first place.
Now, can you tell us finally how DNA is structured?
Sure. DNA is a series of building blocks called nucleotides making one long strand, except that the groundbreaking finding was that it doesn't exist as a single strand, it exists as a double helix. So we have 2 strands running in opposite directions, and they have attraction to one another. You commonly hear of the DNA being talked about as A's, T's, C's, and G's, and these are the building blocks that make up each strand.
Another question. If those other researchers had played by the rules, would Rosalind Franklin have been the first one to publish a paper on the structure of DNA?
That's hard to say. Franklin was a very cautious researcher, and she hated to draw conclusions before all the facts were in. She thought that Watson and Crick had rushed to publish. In fact, it took another 7 years before more evidence came out and the rest of her profession came to accept their theory on DNA as a fact.
The next question is, who should get credit for the discovery of the structure of DNA? I mean, what happens when a discovery is a product of multiple research projects? Do all these researchers get the credit for providing the data, or is it the guy who connected all the dots at the end?
That can be complicated in science, but typically, when you have multiple ideas coming together, all the researchers are listed as co-authors, starting with the one who had the most important contribution. In this case, it's even more convoluted because Watson and Crick were taking a modeling approach, thinking about the theory of the structure, and Franklin was actually looking at the structure itself.
And deciding who gets included in that list and who gets to be mentioned first in the list can get pretty contentious, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, let's see who got the credit for that discovery, but when we return after the break. First, a song. I picked the song Move It by Cliff Richard, a 1958 song that was the first major rock and roll hit in the UK. Bienvenue à tous. This was the song Move It by Cliff Richard. Je m'appelle Philippe Girard.
And I'm Amber Hale. You're listening to Your Grandma Rocks on KBYS, a show about famous women from centuries past. Today, we retrace the steps of Rosalind Franklin, who did some important research on the structure of DNA, but was beaten to the punch when it came to publishing her research.
In part because some of her research was leaked to her rivals in unethical ways.
Right.
So who got credit then? I'm sure that kind of groundbreaking discovery would lead to a Nobel Prize in Medicine or Chemistry, no?
It absolutely did. In 1962, the Nobel Prize in Medicine was awarded to 3 researchers for their role in uncovering the structure of DNA.
Drum roll, please. And these 3 people were?
Watson and Crick, who had published that first article in Nature, and Wilkins, who had published one of the other 2.
Wait, what about Rosalind Franklin? Didn't she publish the 3rd article that day? And didn't the other 3 people use some of her research for their publications?
You'd be correct about that. The issue has remained very controversial ever since.
So why was she left out like this? Is it because she was a woman?
Maybe so. Remember that another scientist we studied, Lise Meitner, was also ignored in favor of her male co-discoverers.
That had almost happened to Marie Curie too. The Nobel Committee only wanted to honor her husband at first until he reminded them that she had done half the work.
There were other issues in Franklin's case. For one thing, the Nobel Prize can only be shared by 3 people, at the most. So one of the 4 authors had to go.
All right.
Last rule by the Nobel Committee: you have to be alive.
And?
Tragically, in 1956, Franklin was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. She died in 1958, 4 years before the Nobel Prize was awarded.
Was the cancer connected to all her work with X-rays? I mean, she may have been exposed to a lot of radiation in labs. That's how Marie Curie died too.
Possibly so, but cancer also ran in her family, and there may have been other causes. Remember what Franklin always said: don't rush to judgment until you have all the evidence.
At any rate, what a life. We're glad we could share it with you.
This program was funded by a Juliet Hartdner grant for women in the humanities. For more information on how to help finance fellowships at McNeese, contact the McNeese Foundation at 337-475-5588.
This program was also sponsored by the History Department at McNeese. To apply for a degree in history or other fields, contact the McNeese Admissions Office at 475-5504.
Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Merci et au revoir.